Saudi Arabia stopped 5 million barrels of crude overnight. That single flow cut, announced without warning, forces the global price-setting benchmark to swing before traders can even adjust their spreadsheets. By throttling output at the world's most flexible refinery hub, Riyadh is leveraging its spare capacity to pressure a coalition of producers who have been refusing to meet its demand for higher prices. The move hits the U.S. gasoline market first because the Gulf's light sweet crude fuels most American refineries, nudging pump prices up within hours. It also squeezes Europe's dwindling strategic reserves, compelling nations to tap emergency stocks that were meant for geopolitical shocks, not market games. If the cut holds for a week, the price spike could push global inflation a fraction higher, tightening household budgets worldwide. Which side of the pump will feel it most? Subscribe to see tomorrow's power move. China placed the F-210 missiles on Dongsha Island. That tiny atoll, barely larger than a football field, sits just 300 kilometers from the busiest segment of the South China Sea's east-west shipping corridor, where most of the world's oil passes. By embedding a CarrierKiller on hardened concrete, Beijing turns an otherwise passive outpost into a strike platform that can engage any vessel within a 500-kilometer radius, effectively extending its anti-access zone beyond the reach of a single carrier group. The move forces navies to reroute ships farther offshore, increasing fuel consumption and insurance costs for every container that eventually reaches your doorstep. It also pressures regional partners to invest in costly defense upgrades just to keep their maritime trade viable. So, does this new missile line change the price you pay at the pump? Subscribe to see tomorrow's power move first. Trump's Iran D-Day hit a hidden lever. On the day the administration rolled out a sweeping sanctions package, it wasn't just about punishing Tehran, it was about re-anchoring the United States as the decisive arbiter of global oil flow. By targeting Iran's ability to move crude through the Strait of Hormuz, the sanctions forced a choke point that handles a third of the world's petroleum, instantly threatening supply chains that keep gasoline pumps open for everyday commuters. The move also signaled to rival powers that Washington can still swing the market, leveraging economic pain to extract diplomatic concessions without firing a shot. As the hammer swings, oil prices edge higher, and the cost of a gallon quietly climbs into your household budget. Which side of the sanctions board are you on? Subscribe to see tomorrow's power move first. Russia's Arctic icebreaker fleet quietly dwarfs the global competition. With over 40 vessels navigating the icy waters, their dominance reshapes shipping routes we rely on. The Arctic, a frozen frontier, is now warming, opening pathways previously impassable. It's not just about geography, it's control. Russia's strategic presence secures access to crucial resources and shortcuts that promise economic clout. This means potential bottlenecks for cargo ships and altered trade flow that ripple through global markets. As logistics shift, the cost of goods we consume every day could soar. The payoff? Russia's Arctic strategy threatens to reposition the balance of maritime power. Will this emerging Cold War and ice impact the prices you pay at the store today? Subscribe to see tomorrow's power move first. China's new Djibouti port launched AI-piloted drones this week. The facility sits beside the Gulf of Aden, the choke point through which over a fifth of the world's maritime trade passes. China's state-owned China Merchants Port built a 300-meter deep-water berth, then installed a fiber-optic hub that links directly to a mainland data center in Beijing. That link gives the drones sub-second latency, allowing real-time target recognition and strike coordination far beyond the range of traditional line-of-sight control. Because the port sits within the Chinese-controlled string of pearls network, any drone sortie can hop to nearby bases in Somalia or the Red Sea without leaving Chinese communications territory. The result is a persistent, AI-driven surveillance and interdiction layer that can monitor, and potentially disrupt, shipping lanes at the cost of a single satellite pass. For global shippers, that translates into higher. Russia launched a hypersonic missile from Novaya Zemlya last week, and the headlines missed it. That remote Arctic archipelago hosts a sealed test complex built after the 2018 K4 trial, where missiles accelerate to Mach 5 before skimming the polar ice. The facility's latitude lets the weapon's glide phase exploit the thin upper atmosphere jet stream, extending range by hundreds of kilometers without extra fuel. By hiding the launch under a routine Arctic weather monitoring flight, Moscow avoids diplomatic fallout while proving a delivery mode that can pierce any existing missile shield. If such missiles become operational, NATO's early warning radars lose a critical window, forcing allies to scramble costly new defenses. The payoff is clear: a weapon that can strike Europe or Asia before any interceptor can react. Which side of that new balance do you stand on? Subscribe to see tomorrow's power move first. China's brand new nuclear icebreaker Shuilong 2 slipped into the Arctic last week, a move the headlines missed. That vessel can smash through 3 meters of ice without surfacing, giving Beijing a year-round foothold on routes the United States and Europe still scramble to patrol. By wintering in the Russian-controlled Northern Sea route, China secures a shortcut that cuts months off shipments from Shanghai to Rotterdam, slashing logistics costs for the factories that feed your grocery shelves. The icebreaker also carries scientific labs that map seabed minerals, a covert way to catalog the rare earth deposits the world's electronics depend on. If Beijing can lock in those resources while others debate sanctions, the price of smartphones and EV batteries could stay low for years. What does a Chinese icebreaker in the Arctic mean for your next gadget? Subscribe to see tomorrow's power move first. An immigration lawyer just sued the Supreme Court. He argues that border agents can now swipe any traveler's phone without a warrant, a power the Constitution's Fourth Amendment never intended. The practice hinges on a 2018 Supreme Court ruling that treats the border as a special sovereign territory, where routine searches are automatic. By extending that logic to digital data, agents can harvest contacts, locations, even encrypted messages before a traveler steps foot on U.S. soil. If the court upholds the rule, every crossing becomes a data harvesting checkpoint, chilling free speech and exposing personal histories to a bureaucracy that rarely logs its own actions. The stakes reach far beyond migrants. Any foreign-born visitor, a tourist, a student, or a truck driver could see their private life cataloged without oversight. The lawyer asked the justices to require a warrant or probable cause before any The U.S. froze Venezuela's oil fund overnight. On December 29, the Office of Foreign Assets Control placed a blanket restriction on any transaction involving the state-run fund, effectively locking away roughly $7 billion of oil revenue. The move sidesteps the usual sanctions narrative and instead targets the cash flow that fuels Caracas's ability to purchase foreign food, medicine, and crucially, to pay back its debt to China's banks. By choking that income, Washington forces Maduro's regime to negotiate debt relief on terms that tilt future oil contracts toward U.S. refiners, while also signaling to allies that any oil-linked financing will trigger immediate financial isolation. The broader impact ripples to the global oil market. With less Venezuelan crude available, spot prices inch higher, nudging the price you pay at the pump. So, does this financial strike change the balance of power in the West? TSMC alone ships more than half of the world's advanced chips. That single contract maker powers everything from your smartphone's camera to the AI chips that run autonomous car software. Because Taiwan's fabs use a 300mm lithography system that only 2 suppliers worldwide can provide, any disruption forces manufacturers to halt production for weeks. When the 2022 drought forced a temporary shutdown, global smartphone prices spiked and car makers delayed launches, showing how tightly the supply chain ties to everyday cost. China's dual circulation plan counts on replicating that capability, yet its own facilities lack the cleanroom precision that TSMC perfected after the 1997 tech boom. U.S. export controls now target the rare earth gases essential for those lithography machines, turning a technical component into a geopolitical lever. If the flow of chips, France delivered the 100th Rafale to Abu Dhabi, a milestone the headlines ignored. The deal, worth $30 billion, locks the UAE into a French supply chain for airframes, engines, and spare parts for the next 2 decades. Every Rafale requires a French-made Eurofighter-type engine, meaning Dubai's pilots will depend on Paris for routine overhauls and software upgrades. That dependency gives France a direct line into the Gulf's security architecture, counterbalancing Britain's historic ties and China's growing influence in the region. For the Emirates, the jets replace aging Mirage fleets, boosting strike reach over the Persian Gulf and Yemen, where oil routes and humanitarian corridors intersect. The hidden payoff is that France now secures a foothold in a market that supplies 40% of global oil, shaping price stability for consumers worldwide. Which side of the sky do you think will dominate the Gulf's future? A Russian submarine base on Norway's Svalbard island. What's really beneath the icy surface? The location's proximity to key Arctic sea lanes offers a strategic vantage point, invisible to most. Submarines surfacing here could monitor 30% of the world's untapped gas reserves and exert influence over the emerging Northern Sea route. Despite officially upholding Svalbard's demilitarized status, Russian activities signal otherwise, likely driven by resource control and geopolitical leverage. This chess move under the midnight sun could transform global energy flow and security dynamics. As Arctic routes become viable due to melting ice, how does this shift the power balance every time temperatures drop? Subscribe to see tomorrow's power move first.